You know what? You beautiful people are here on time. And I know you got lots of questions. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm Tim Miner, co founder of Charlotte is Creative, along with my friend Matt Olin, who is here on the call, and Safety Ravel, one of our teammates. Really excited to present today Priya Sarkar, the city's arts and culture officer, to share with you her insights on how priorities 4, 5, and 7 might be applicable to you and to your proposal. A few housekeeping things before we jump into that. Please be active in the chat. We are going to have an FAQ. What's wrong with me? We're going to have a question and answer session at the end, but we are monitoring the chat. So if throughout Priya's conversation you think of a question, please do drop it in the chat. And then we will get around to it at the end. We're trying to be very orderly. We may at the end let you come off mic and ask the question, but putting it in the chat is the best way to do it. The other thing is we would ask everyone to stay mute if you're not speaking. We've got a lot of people on these Zooms and we're recording them, so we want to make sure that the audio is really clear and that you can hear Priya and hear the speakers. So we know we're launching into the work week. We may, in fact, be a little groggy from the weekend. So to kickstart us, as we do with every one of these information sessions about the Opportunity Fund, we have invited a local creative to do a creative moment to get us started. In this case, an absolute powerhouse, a national slam poet champion, and the current poet laureate of Charlotte. I'd like everybody to get excited. Get ready to hear an original work by Jay Ward. I am excited because I've heard this. He wrote it for the Kane Center in Cornelius for a meeting that they had last week. It's amazing, and I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thanks so much, Tim. Good morning, everybody. The sun, a fire burning high in the sky, holds our solar system together. It sends just the right amount of light to Earth for photosynthesis and for the chemical conversion of ultraviolet rays into vitamin D, and just enough light to release our eyes from the plague of eternal shadow. Okay, that part is a little dramatic, but to imagine life without art is to imagine Earth without the sun. In Greek mythology, Prometheus brought the gift of fire, a small sun in his pocket, to share with mankind. And although the Opportunity Fund and others can be considered a gift, I imagine each of you are a gift and gift givers. Promethean philanthropists unlocking every potential in Lake Norman and Cornelius and South End and Plaza Midwood and University and Betty's Ford and beyond. If someone were to ask what artists and businesses and individuals and the city working together have to do with the sun, I'd point to arts and schools and arts and community scholarships and music lessons. I'd point to the Kane Center for the Arts. I'd also point to the Opportunity Fund, and I'd point to the Arts and Culture Plan, and I'd point to you and everything that you're doing for this community. I would point to community impact. I'd point to all the things that the arts have always done. Create bridges to bring all kinds of people together, promote innovation and well-being, shine its light on inequities and demand change. Think outside of constraints to imagine better futures. We cannot imagine life without art. And if someone else were to then ask, what does arts and culture do for a community? Same thing sunlight does for our planet. Illuminates areas that need our attention, draws groups of us together for common cause, helps motivations and movements to grow, tells us what time it is, and literally alters our mood. The powerful thing about art is that it both comforts and provokes, inspires and validates, justifies and condemns, disrupts, sparks every chain reaction needed to combust into a torch that can be carried from generation to generation to generation. And I am not necessarily saying that we are all right now sitting in the heart of the sun, or that each of us is a solar flare, feverishly pitching our warmth into an ever-increasing darkness. But what I am saying is imagine all the light that emanates from this place, how that light enhances the way that we see each other, and how each of us are, in fact, holding a little gift, a little fire that once shared will forever change the world. Thank you.
All right, that is amazing. Everybody, go down into the reactions and give Jay some love. Get that chat, that comment field, and tell him what you thought of that poem. I'm really thankful, Jay, that you shared your incredible talents with us today, as you do every day. I'm also thankful to the Kane Center for commissioning that poem for their first Arts in Breakfast event last week, and tapping into Jay and giving that to all of us. Just absolutely fantastic. I don't know of a better way to start, but we have started, so let's get going. I want to remind everybody, if you are new on this call, make sure if you have questions, because Priya is about to drop some serious knowledge bombs, make sure that you are actively using that comment field. We are looking for your questions. We are writing them down, and we will get to them at the end. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce the city's first, the inaugural Arts and Culture Officer, Priya Sarkar.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you all for taking time to get together today to learn some more about the Opportunity Fund. And Jay, what can I say? It is always a real treat and a privilege to hear you perform. And thank you for inspiring us as always, and for calling us to action. So I can't think of a better way to get into it today, to think about what we all are doing to help advance this community plan and vision on how to sustain and grow arts and culture in our community. All of you are already doing this work every day. We know that, and we appreciate that. And we thank you for the role you've played in shaping this community plan. We're excited to now be moving into that place of putting the plan into action, and really excited that the Arts and Culture Advisory Board has set aside a significant amount of dollars, almost $1 million, to be able to advance the plan by supporting the work that you are doing. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the kind of general information session we did last Thursday, not to worry, the recording's online. Please do go check it out. That was a kind of higher level, big picture. What is this Opportunity Fund grant all about? And then what we're doing now is drilling down into some of the specific priorities and strategies in the plan that are the places where you might find alignment with your projects and programs and initiatives. We're just trying to, help, foster more understanding throughout the community about what are the specific things in the plan, and then to help you to determine whether there's alignment, and to really help you understand, or help you to figure out if there is a good fit, so that you can decide whether you would like to submit a letter of intent application by 6 p.m. on March 28th. So we're here for you to help do that. And one of the ways is, I'm about to go through some details in the plan. So again, as Tim mentioned, we covered a couple priorities last Friday. Those are also recorded and available online. Today, we're going to talk about priorities 4, 5, and 7. Not all of the priorities in the plan, and not all the priorities and strategies are kind of eligible for alignment, just because there are aspects of things in the plan. If you've had a chance to look at it, or you might have been involved in shaping it, you've seen that there's some things that really do fall into the space of what is the city doing? What is the county doing? What are certain entities doing? What's the corporate sector doing? What are the different roles that, we have to play? So we've really kept the bulk of those things, actually, though, that we see as having a lot of potential for alignment with things that you all might be doing. So just want to explain why you don't see all 8 priorities and all strategies in the LOI form. So what I'm going to do, and if you'll bear with me, I'm just going to share my screen. And for those of you who might have looked at the plan already, or are planning to check it out, after this, there are links in the landing page where the guidelines are, as well as we've had the plan up online. on the city's page as well. So I'm actually just going to literally walk us through that on my screen. And Sethu, I wonder if you, I'm getting a message that I can't share my screen, and I wonder if that's something you might be able to help me with.
Try now.
Thanks. Perfect, thank you. Okay, folks, does everyone see what looks like a plan with green on it? Yes, I'm seeing some nodding heads, great. And is it large enough? Do I need to make it bigger? Essentially, don't worry about all the many columns that are here. We're really just going to be looking at the leftmost column that says action cost, and I'm going to be going through what those things are. Can people see? Can you guys see okay? All right, great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to take the next, for the next half hour or less, hopefully, going to go through walk through the actions, the priorities, strategies, and the actions underneath. Want to make clear that what we're asking you to do, especially in the LOI stage of this application, which is the shorter, we hope easier phase of the application, is to choose a priority and a strategy with which you feel like your project, your new project program or initiative, or your expanded project program or initiative fits best with. That doesn't mean it can't also fit with other things in the plan. That's fine. And in the second phase of the application process, if your application is found to be eligible, you'd have more of an opportunity to talk about those other ways it aligns. But we really want to find out the area of strongest alignment, and it doesn't have to be with one of these specific actions, but I do want to explain what actions are in the plan, because you might find that your project actually does align with one of those. But to also want to make clear that the actions that are in the plan are things that the steering group and the community task forces that wrote the plan together found to be the most important recommendations that they saw, but that doesn't mean it's an exhaustive list, excuse me. There might be something you're doing. There's a great project, a great way to advance a priority and a strategy, and it's just not one of the actions here, and that's okay. We want to know how you see that alignment. So, priority 4 is one that might be near and dear to many of your hearts. We certainly heard this as a loud kind of message and clear theme, which is the importance of providing access to affordable space for the creation and experience of arts and culture. So that's certainly for artists and creatives who are making the work, and organizations and groups, but also for the public to be experiencing arts and culture. And I want to just underscore 2 pieces of this, because it really goes hand in hand. It's not just the access, that's important, of course, but it's the affordability. That's so key, right? You could have access in certain dimensions and not the affordability, and then it's really not that accessible, right? And also, I was reflecting on this the other day, accessibility also isn't necessarily the same thing as availability, because there could be spaces available, but depending on what time it's available, whether you can get park there, or if parking is free or expensive, or if public transit goes there, or there's so many different sort of components of what makes a place actually accessible, that these are all things that matter when it comes to having space in our community that people can really use to create and experience art. So under that, we've got 3 strategies. The first one is partner with city, county, private businesses to convert vacant spaces into multidisciplinary, right here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I'm reading off the strategy. To convert vacant spaces into multidisciplinary art centers, and to identify or incentivize the creation of arts districts inclusive of all forms of art for creation, rehearsal, practice, display, and experience of art. So one thing I want to just mention is, while this is such an important priority for our community, obviously, that's why it's a priority in the plan, we do also recognize that typically space or facilities projects, infrastructural things like that, they do tend to be more expensive, right? And if you think about the range of kind of cost that there might be for a project, facilities and space and infrastructure, that tends to be on the high end of how much something could cost. So, you know, to think back to what is the size, what are the sizes of these grants and the timelines of these grants? For this cycle, for this opportunity fund, these are one-year grants. So, you know, the funding would likely get distributed in July of this year because the awards would be decided toward the end of June. And then the awarded projects, the grantees would sign a grant agreement with the Foundation for the Carolinas, who is our partner who distributes the funding and holds the grant contracts. And then, you know, the sooner that grant agreement letter gets signed, then the funds are dispersed. So that's typically going to happen, hopefully, like by the end of July or so. And then the projects, these should be projects that wrap up by the June 30th, 2025. So that's 1 year. A lot of times space facility projects, large projects can take longer. You know, they can take a long time to do, they can take a long time to even to put all the money together. So there's going to be projects probably that are, that may not be a good fit for this particular grant, especially because this grant is up to $40,000. Now, up to $40,000 is still a healthy amount for a 1-year grant for some kind of project or program or initiative. But again, it depends on the type. So I just want to put that caveat out there that as you're thinking about whether you're involved in a space-related project that you're interested in, whether a particular project is a good fit for this particular grant opportunity, just keep in mind, like, how long is this project likely to take? How much money is it likely to take? Because these grants aren't really, you know, in most facilities projects, they're probably going to be a drop in the bucket. And in that sense, they're not necessarily going to be the right fit. However, if there's a small project, or if there's something that's about activating spaces in a way that isn't going to take, you know, a much larger amount of money, that might be a good fit for this opportunity fund. So let's go into some of the actions. And don't worry, again, if you have questions, I am going to keep going through these, but please put your questions in the chat and we'll collect them and we'll get to them in the Q&A, and or we'll add them to the FAQ that is evolving online. So number one, work with the city, county. So here I'm in the left-hand column. Number one, work with the city or county or private businesses to identify and convert vacant spaces for possible temporary and or long-term use rather than tear down or remain completely empty. Ensure that they're usable as creation, rehearsal, display, live workspace, and experience spaces. Meaning it doesn't have to, they don't have to fit all of those things, check all those boxes. These are just a range of types of functions that you know, the community really said, these are the types of functions we need to be able to do in various spaces. So here I do also want to highlight, this is talking about temporary or long-term use. So one of the things that came out through this cultural planning process, and especially the task forces working to develop this part of the plan, is that it's likely going to take a combination of near-term solutions and longer-term solutions for space in our community, right? The longer-term solutions are probably going to be the more expensive and more time-consuming solutions. That doesn't mean we shouldn't pursue them, but we just kind of need to be aware of that. And that's why there are likely some short-term or temporary solutions that also we should be looking at while we're working on long-term solutions. So that's why those are both called out here. Number two, secure lots or land to develop additional spaces throughout the county. I think that's pretty straightforward, but let's also be frank that a 1-year $40,000 grant is not necessarily going to be an amount that one could secure a lot or land with. So this is one that may not be as good a fit for something you're working on. Number three, identify diversified funding, so grants, incentives, arts district endowments, gifts, City of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, public sector incentives, block grants, workforce development grants. to support economic development, to support the purchase of spaces. Again, this one may not be so much about a fit with a project that you might be doing in community. These are really calling out lots of different tools that various entities within, whether it's something that you're working on or something that one of our public or private sector entities is working on, to keep in mind lots of different tools in our tool belt of how we can support the purchase of spaces. That's what that one is about. I'm going to go ahead and move on to priority for strategy 2, which is over here now on the right side of my page, which is partner with developers and corporations to intentionally build, renovate, incorporate, and operate multidisciplinary art spaces into new construction and existing buildings for practice, rehearsal, creation, display, and experiences. So this is also about, again, as we think of new buildings that are kind of coming online, maybe they're in the works or they're, will be planned in future, or existing spaces, thinking about perhaps reuse or temporary ways to use those spaces while longer term solutions are developed. So some of these ideas are here in the actions. Number 1, use corporate lobbies for artist exhibit spaces. Kind of straightforward, but I think a great idea to put out there, and some folks are doing that, but we might have a lot of spaces in town that could be used in that way. Number 2, enhance privately owned public space activation. So again, this is more like thinking about private property owners who might have space that's public, and thinking about how arts and culture could be incorporated into those places. I will say most of these, these would require, of course, partnerships with those businesses or organizations or property owners. Number 3, increase murals on exterior surfaces. Very straightforward. It's already obviously happening, but we're just talking about building on what's already going on in our community. Number 4, incentivize corporate contributions to vacant space conversions. So incentivizing, again, that's probably a little bit more about thinking about how public-private sector work together, but just wanting to, it's just another dimension of how space could be converted or used for arts and culture. Number 5, partner with and incentivize developers to include arts and culture creation, practice, and display spaces in new building projects and construction. Again, similar theme, just a slightly different take on some of the ideas that were mentioned above. So keeping an eye on the time, I'm just going to go ahead and keep going right now. So priority 4, strategy 3 is prioritize local, I'm right here for those of you following along. Prioritize local artist access and affordability to city, county-owned public art and non-traditional art spaces like libraries, schools, parks, houses of faith, etc. So some of the actions under this. 1, list open spaces in a local database or on a calendar. So that's something that there are versions of this in other communities, and you might be familiar with a tool we developed through the cultural planning process, which was spaces and places. It's basically a cultural asset inventory and map. Our city team is actually rebuilding that in-house right now so that it can live on. But this is kind of an idea that builds on that in a way that identifies available spaces so that people can find them. Number 2, market these spaces within local arts communities. Number 3, provide funding such as grants and donations to cultivate and curate spaces. So guess what? An Opportunity Fund grant is a type of grant that could support cultivation and curation of such spaces. Number 4, ensure city and county-owned facilities are available for affordable use by local artists and arts and culture organizations. Clearly, this is definitely something that we as public entities, the city and the county, that's for us to look at and see, what we can do there. And number 5, encourage cooperative studio and retail spaces for arts entrepreneurs and creatives to build income through their creative endeavors. I think that one's fairly straightforward. So again, with that, here you also probably see different opportunities for potential alignment with things that you might be interested in or working on developing. And again, with these, oftentimes some kind of collaboration is likely going to be involved, but not necessarily so. And then I'm going to go ahead and keep moving because we want to have plenty of time for questions. So moving on to priority 5, that is, you can see up here at the top, eliminate barriers to arts and culture creation and participation. So the first one of these is strategy 1 is provide tickets and transportation to arts and cultural events. Number 1 is increase free events and free tickets or steeply discounted tickets to offerings at city and county-owned facilities, including seasonal offerings. This is something that is specifically referring to our public-owned facilities. So, of course, that's something that for the public entities to be looking at their facilities and how those operate. Number 2, leverage philanthropic resources to reduce costs of attending events throughout the city, county, and underwrite expenses of artists and organizations. This is something that I'll take a moment on. So this could be, it says philanthropic. It could also be like sponsorships, like corporate sponsorships, marketing. There are partnerships that have happened, in fact, and sponsorship programs in cities that have where corporations have even underwritten like free days at places. I know for a long time there were things called Target First Thursdays. Unfortunately, they stopped doing that. So there are different versions of this in different places, we kind of have a version of this here as well with Uptown facilities on Wednesday nights, being free. It's just thinking about if there are additional ways to help this to happen. I will say that for the Opportunity Fund, again, for the size of grant it is and for it to being 1 year, and we have had kind of some inquiries about this in past cycles of the Opportunity Fund grant. This grant isn't really meant to be something where we're kind of just sort of it's being kind of re-granted as for a purpose like this. So in terms of just kind of underwriting X number of tickets, that's kind of not the type of project that the Opportunity Fund is really meant to do. The Opportunity Fund grant has always been envisioned as something that could be a catalyst for a new idea, a new element of a existing program, project, or initiative, or a completely new, program, project, or initiative that you've been wanting to do, but just haven't been able to try. And so that's really more what an Opportunity Fund grant is meant for. But in any case, I wanted to just explain what this action is under strategy 1. And number 3, create a free transportation program to arts and culture events. That is something that I think would be amazing. I will say it is probably, when it comes to like transportation, it's likely to be a larger scale kind of program that might not be a fit for an Opportunity Fund grant. But that said, if you have something in mind that could fit in this realm, we would be happy to hear it and have a conversation about that. So moving on, number 5, priority 5, strategy 2 over here on the left is enable cross-cultural shared collaborations, shared experiences throughout Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and an abundance of diverse local creative work throughout Charlotte-Mecklenburg. So action 1 is create a directory of Charlotte arts organizations and artists, letting them specify if they're interested in working on cross-cultural collaborations. Those interested can then contact each other through the directory to create new partnerships. So I will say that we've actually got, as far as I know, at least a couple of projects like this that are underway that actually received funding through the Knight Foundation last year or the year before. And so those are ones that potentially you could participate in. I believe that Charlotte is Creative is involved in one, and Blumenthal is involved in one, and there might be a third one afoot as well. So, but in any case, the idea here is creating that kind of directory and then enabling participation or coordination amongst folks. So number 2, create a mobile arts and culture program to transport creative programming throughout neighborhoods countywide, ensuring that such a program involves the creation and sharing of authentic cultural experiences versus simply importing unsolicited arts and culture offerings. So this is about really just enabling arts and culture to be experienced and shared throughout our community in various neighborhoods, both promoting things that are in community, like from and of a particular neighborhood, but also allowing it to flow throughout neighborhoods as well. Number 3, ensure arts and culture experiences are embedded into Charlotte's mobility, e.g., artistic activations at transit stations, urban trails and greenways, and bus stops. So, this one mentions some things that kind of are in the realm of what some of our public sector entities work on. So, of course, when it's like transit stations and bus stops, those are things that kind of fall into the realm of, say, CATS. And then urban trails and greenways, some of those might actually be in the realm of spaces that the county is overseeing. But that said, that doesn't mean there couldn't be partnerships and various ideas that could be explored here. So definitely open to ideas, just with the acknowledgement that those would likely require some collaborations with those entities. Number 4, reflect the full range of artistic disciplines and forms practiced in Charlotte-Mecklenburg and increase representation by local artists and creatives in public art. I think that one is fairly self-explanatory. Number 5, integrate placemaking and art into existing and future public infrastructure. So again, that relates to both infrastructure, things that the public entities are involved in, but also even thinking about what other partnerships there might be that have to do with placemaking and art. Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to scroll down. And then number 6 under here, explore and support use of technology to eliminate barriers to access and enable creativity and connection. So that certainly could be a lot of things, but just wanting to acknowledge the use of technology that's increasing, and think about the ways that technology could actually eliminate barriers to access and participation, and support our creativity. So, I'm going to move on to strategy 3 because we still have a whole other priority to get through. So this one is, again, under priority 5 about eliminating barriers. I do want to just note this version that I have, the version I've got pulled up right here, the language this is incorrect. So bear with me a moment. I'm going to read to you the correct language for strategy 3. Which is also, it's available elsewhere in the document, but rather than scrolling, I'm just going to read it to you. So what actually should be printed here is, ensure the resources exist in neighborhoods and communities throughout Charlotte-Mecklenburg, whereby creatives at all levels are encouraged and supported. So that one is I think clear to me and pretty broad, but we can certainly answer any questions about it in the Q&A. And it so happens there's one action listed in the plan under this. So we'll go through that. But it doesn't mean that this action is the only way to do that strategy. So you may have other ideas about how to advance that strategy. The one in the plan is this: create a community artist program, pilot in art corridors of opportunity, and then replicate in all other areas, in which artists from those neighborhoods are supported to create community reflective work, engage with their community, and mentor younger generations of emerging creatives. So this talks about just some of those ways in which the task force felt that, this strategy could be achieved. But again, there could be other ways to do it as well, in addition to. Again, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and move on to strategy 7. Then we'll open it up for Q&A. So priority 7 is foster collaboration and cooperation through the creative ecosystem and with other sectors. You might be noticing a theme of collaboration, and that is by no accident. That has always been a keen interest of the Arts and Culture Advisory Board, and actually even was talked about by Charlotte City Council when the Infusion Fund was first established and the board created. And obviously it's also an interest among our community, otherwise it wouldn't have made it into the plan as such a high priority. So there are a couple of strategies under this priority. One is incentivize and enable cross-sector collaborations within the creative ecosystem and with other sectors, such as healthcare, manufacturing, education, social service, etc., through funding and technical support. So want to note that we're not saying anything in this plan, that the whole plan is from scratch, right? That nothing in this plan is happening yet and we're all starting from zero. That's not the case. Some of the things in this plan, they're already happening. You all are already doing this work, and various other partners are doing some of this work. And it's about building on what's happening or doing it even better. And then there are then also things in this plan that aren't happening yet, and that where we would be really starting something new. So we know that collaborations are happening both within the arts and culture community and between the arts and culture sector and other disciplines and sectors as named here, and there's other sectors too. But certainly over the last few years, we've seen more and more of that happening, as well as a greater appetite to do even more of it. And so that's what this is getting at. So some of those actions: 1, fund collaborative multi-year initiatives between 2 or more organizations and or individual artists that include both access to and presentation of arts and culture in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, including planning for collaboration. So with this one, I want to say that while this says multi-year, which is important, and I'm a big fan of multi-year, at this point, again, this particular grant is a 1-year grant, and that's also because the Infusion Fund is ending soon. So we're distributing some of the last dollars that we have, because the Infusion Fund was always a temporary solution while we stabilize the sector and infuse more dollars throughout the sector. So this particular grant is 1 year. That doesn't mean there's not something in here that could be supported through an Opportunity Fund grant. It depends on what you're seeking to do. Number 2, midpoint check-in to monitor progress of collaboration initiative and point to next steps. Technical support might include planning, professional development opportunities, networking, administrative support, guidance, media, and dissemination packages. This is very much what I like. The jargony way of saying this, I guess I would say, is like capacity building our ability as a community, as artists and organizations and groups and businesses, building our ability to collaborate, and what are some of those support mechanisms to do it. So that's kind of what you are seeing here, and it's a step-by-step recommendation of all the things that the task force felt were necessary. So of course, one is funding, but also then it's checking in and monitoring to see how things are going, understanding that it takes time to build those partnerships. And then 3, you see another element of that evaluate the impact and progress of the seed funding supported, that supported period. Probably should be periodic and technical support. The seed funding supported period, the period that was supported by that funding, and technical support to pursue further support beyond local structures. So really it's about evaluating how things were going, how did it work during that initial time frame, and then think about what further support structures would be needed to help the collaborations keep going. And number 4, expand upon existing collaborations among large organizations, small to mid-sized groups, individual artists and creatives, while creating new ones. Achieved through access to spaces, financial support and compensation, co-development of programming, and other means. So again, it's about building on the types of collaborations that are already happening, doing more of them, and really making sure that they're meaningful collaborations, and they're equitable collaborations. The partners are all, benefiting equitably, and folks are being supported and compensated in these collaborations. And I think this is the last strategy we're looking at today. Is that right? Yeah, that's priority 8. Strategy 2 under priority 7 is build capacity for collaborations across the sector through networking, infrastructure, and financial resources. So again, this is about what are all the things that need to happen to support our ability to collaborate successfully. So the actions under here are 1, identify key partners who have strong, diverse, well-connected networks and platforms to facilitate potential first steps in collaborations. Number 2, establish a Charlotte-Mecklenburg-based network of potential collaborative organizations seeking connections across the field, i.e., who's even interested and in what type of collaborations. And number 3, mentor collaborating organizations to take it beyond preliminary efforts and encourage deliberative efforts to promote growth and mobility for smaller and grassroots organizations. So again, you see this theme of what does it take to support meaningful collaborations, and what does it take to continue them, evaluate how they're going, and help them to be successful in the long term. Again, these are not necessarily the only ways to do these strategies. You may have some other ideas, but these are the things that rose to the top during the planning process. So with that,